May peace surround you as we begin this sacred reflection. May your spirit quiet your heart open and your imagination be lifted. For the story we are about to share is not of earth alone, but of eternity. Before the soil knew touch, before time dared to move, there was sound. Not of thunder, not of water, but of voices. Voices that had no mouths, singing songs that needed no air. Before Adam ever woke, before Eve ever wept, they were there. They were called the sons of God. Not sons by blood, not sons by dust, but sons by something older. By light, by fire, by proximity. Scripture opens not with them, but beneath them. We read of gardens, of rivers, of man drawn from clay. But long before that first heartbeat, there was joy in the heavens. Job 38:7 paints it for us. The morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Imagine that moment, when the curtain of nothingness was pulled back by divine hands. Light exploded from silence. Order sprang from chaos. And those beings, those ancient witnesses, they saw it, they sang it. They shouted not for themselves, but for Him, for the Creator, for the Source, for the one they had known before worlds were spun. Who were they? We call them angels, messengers, cherubim, seraphim. But sons of God, that is something different. Not a role, not a title, a relation, a proximity, a reflection. They were there when time was born. They rejoiced when gravity bowed. They worshipped when matter obeyed. No pulpit declared them, no scribe documented them, but they were there. And they were watching, waiting, worshipping. They did not shape the mountains. They did not breathe life into man, but they stood as the first response to creation's spark. They were doxology in motion. The Amen before the earth knew its name. Before commandments, before covenants, before kings and prophets. There was this, a song, a shout, a holy roar. And what did they see, these sons of God? They saw a universe born in obedience. They saw love take form. They saw power restrained by beauty. They were not audience, they were choir. They were firelight on the edge of the cosmos, singing as the spheres began to turn. And they knew something we forget, that worship precedes understanding, that awe does not require explanation. They rejoiced because He acted. They shouted because He willed. We begin here, not with Eden, not with sin, but with celebration. Because before the fall, before the snake, before the shame, there was wonder. Let us return to it. This is where our story begins. At the edge of nothing, when all was still. And then suddenly He spoke, and in response they sang. Let the story begin. They were not born, they were summoned. Not through womb or lineage, but by the voice that needs no air. The sons of God did not evolve from nature. They were not formed from the clay, nor raised in the rhythm of day and night. They appeared when God willed them, fully formed, fully aware, bathed not in time, but in light. They were the first to see glory unfold, the first to witness power without boundary, the first to tremble not from fear, but from reverent joy. They knew no hunger, no decay, no sin. Yet they were not gods. They had a beginning. They had a purpose. And that purpose was to watch, to worship, and to witness. Not to question, not to command, only to adore. Imagine such a being, eyes like fire, movement like wind, voice like cascading waters, who had seen the deep before it was named, who had heard the silence before it broke. And still they bowed. This is the wonder of heaven's order. Even the mighty bend low. Even the luminous sing not of themselves, but of the one who made them. But even among them, even in such a realm, a question began to stir. Not from the mouth, but from the will. Not spoken aloud, but felt like friction beneath peace. What if glory could be seized, not received? What if a created one could ascend, not to serve, but to reign? It began as a whisper, a flicker, a shadow behind the radiance. One did not shout. He considered. He did not curse. He calculated. And thus the first fracture formed, not in the fabric of the cosmos, but in the allegiance of the heart. Before, there was sin in Eden, there was ambition in heaven. But that tale, we will come to soon. First, we must understand more. For these sons of God, though distant in form, are closer in meaning than we dare assume. Why begin here? Why not start with the serpent, the garden, the man and the rib? Because to understand the fall, we must first understand the height from which it came. Before shame had a name, before thorns touched the earth, there was unbroken harmony. There were beings pure radiant who had never known temptation, who had no need for grace, who stood unshaken in the presence of majesty. And among them one turned, but not all. Some remained. Some still remain. And their song, though ancient, still echoes, not in sound, but in spirit. For in their worship, we see a reflection of what we were made for. They remind us, we were not created first, but we were created beloved. Not to compete with angels, but to join the heavenly choir. To rise not by flight, but by faith. To become sons of God ourselves, not by nature, but by grace. This is not mythology. This is theology clothed in awe. This is not fiction. This is foundation. We speak not of wings and halos, but of beings whose very gaze could undo you. And yet they serve. They wait. They worship. They were there before time, and they will be there when time is no more. So we ask again, who were the sons of God before the creation of Adam and Eve? Not simply as a question of history, but as a question of identity. What can their origin teach us about our own? What can their obedience and their rebellion reveal about the drama we now live in? Because make no mistake, this is not their story alone. This is ours. Their worship foreshadowed our calling. Their fall warns of our pride. Their perseverance reflects the unseen wars still raging around us. And yet, amid all this mystery, there is invitation. To learn, to wonder, to awaken. So, if these truths stir something in you, a hunger, a memory, a glimmer, let that be your beginning. Like, share, subscribe. Not for vanity, but so. This story. Our story can reach others standing at the edge of belief, because you are not alone. And this journey is just beginning. Let us now turn from the radiance of worship to the shattering of pride. The first fracture is coming. Are you ready to see how heaven trembled? So let us step now beyond the music of creation into the silence before the storm. What happens when a being made to reflect light begins to desire it for himself? What happens when worship turns inward? When the brightest among them no longer bows? The heavens, once unshaken, will stir. The first fracture is not heard in thunder, but in pride. Now we descend into the heart of rebellion. Welcome to part 2. The first fracture. Pride in the sky. He was not the lowest. He was the highest among servants. A guardian of glory, a bearer of light. Not cast in shadows, but bathed in brilliance. His name, we know it now as enemy. But once it meant morning. Lucifer, son of the dawn. Ezekiel describes him not as a beast, but as a crafted wonder. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were on the holy mount of God. Clothed in radiant stones, he walked among fire unburned. He did not crawl, he soared. He did not whisper lies, he sang praise. He did not hate the light. He was called light-bearer. So what changed? What shifts inside a being who has seen the face of God and decides he wants it? It did not begin with a shout. It began with a gaze. He looked not at God, but at himself. not at glory received, but at splendor possessed. He admired, then desired, then deceived, not others, not yet, but himself. He believed that what he bore he owned, that what he reflected was his. He had forgotten that the moon only shines because of the sun. Isaiah speaks of him in lament. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground. And why? For you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will be like the Most High. 5 declarations, each one a rung of rebellion. I will ascend, I will exalt, I will sit, I will rise, I will be. The chorus of pride. He who once said holy now says I. And with that whisper he fractures the silence of heaven. This was not a coup with weapons. No swords, no shields. It was ambition. Cold, calm, calculated. A desire not to destroy but to replace. Lucifer did not want chaos. He wanted control. Not to end glory, but to possess it. And the tragedy is this. He had already been given more than any creature before him. But more was not enough when the throne remained occupied. The beauty became bitterness. The fire became poison. The light twisted inward until it burned. He who once reflected glory now consumed it. He who once covered the mercy seat now warred against mercy itself. He did not fall alone. He turned and others followed. Not beasts, not rebels born of earth, but angels, sons of God, beings who once stood at the dawn of time, who had sung at the birth of creation. Now listen to a different song, not one of praise but of promise, not worship but ambition. Lucifer did not rally with threats. He seduced with splendor. He knew their language. He had stood beside them for ages. He spoke not as a stranger, but as one of them. And what did he offer? Freedom. He offered elevation. Why should worship flow only in one direction? Why should we sing forever and never rise? It was not a rebellion of rage. It was a campaign of reason, a redefinition of honor, a new kind of logic. And for many, it worked. Scripture whispers of this cosmic fracture. In Revelation, it says, his tail swept 1/3 of the stars from the sky and flung them to the earth. 1/3, 1 in 3, countless in number, incomprehensible in brightness. And yet, they chose. They saw him, the Holy One enthroned in majesty, and still turned away. They had no serpent to deceive them, no weakness of flesh, no hunger, no fear. Only pride, only envy, only the whisper. You too could rise. And so they did. But where does one rise when all heights are already occupied? Lucifer's climb was not upward. It was inward, a descent masquerading as ascent. And the others, they followed his echo, not all at once, not with swords raised, but with loyalty shifted, with allegiance re-aimed. Heaven did not shatter in an instant. It cracked, slowly, sharply, silently. The first war was not fought with fire. It was fought with intention. And once that intention was clear, heaven responded, not with fear, but with fury. Not chaos, but judgment. There was no compromise, no debate. The holy cannot host the profane. And so the verdict came. You are cast down. You are fallen. No longer will you walk among the stones of fire. The light-bearer was darkened. The sons who followed were banished, and the song was broken. But heaven did not fall. Only the prideful. Order remained. The throne stood. God had not moved. It was they who had turned. They did not fall like stones. They were cast down like lightning, not one by one, but all at once. The heavens did not tremble, they roared. Michael, the archangel warrior of God, did not raise a fist in panic, but drew the sword of decree. There was war in heaven, John writes in Revelation. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought, and his angels, but there was no suspense, only judgment, but they prevailed. Not neither was their place found anymore in heaven, not just removed, erased. The brilliance that once walked among the stones of fire now writhed in banishment. The morning star was extinguished, and in its place, a void. But this void was not empty. It was burning. The light-bearer became the adversary. Satan, the accuser, the enemy. He who once covered the mercy seat now prowled in rage. He who once sang now snarled. And the angels who fell with him, they were no longer sons, no longer messengers. They were cast out, stripped not only of place but of name. Once beings of praise, now they became echoes of defiance. Their presence brought not clarity but confusion, not revelation but deception. They had traded majesty for malice. And heaven stood still, not in weakness but in holiness. The chorus that had been interrupted was rejoined. The silence left by the fallen was not filled with noise, but with awe. The other sons, those who had not turned, they did not cheer. They bowed deeper. Because in that moment, they knew. The throne does not tremble. The crown does not shift. God is not surprised. He is sovereign. The rebellion had ended before it had begun. And yet, something had changed, not in God, but in the story. From this moment forward, the spiritual realm would not only be radiant, it would be contested. The war had begun, not of weapons, but of will. And where would that war continue? Not in heaven, not yet, but on a small blue world not yet formed, a world called Earth. And then God spoke again, not to judge, but to begin. Not to cast down, but to raise up. The battlefield had been cleared, but not with ruin. With silence. A silence that did not last long. For the Spirit hovered not in heaven, but over waters. Formless, empty, dark. Until he said, "Let there be light." Not the light of stars. They came later. This light was purpose, presence, peace. And with that word, creation began to unfold like a scroll long sealed. The stars took their places, the waters parted. The earth rose from the deep. Time started its rhythm. But this time God was not creating angels. He was forming something lower, finer, fragile, not made of flame, not born of breathless praise, but of dust. And yet he called it very good. Why? Because this time he would not only make life, he would make image, not a reflection of radiance, but of relationship. Not another servant, but a son. A creature that could choose, could walk, could speak, could fall. A being with body, and a soul that reached beyond stars. And so he formed man, with hands, not command, with breath, not decree. And when Adam opened his eyes, the war had already begun. He did not know it yet, but he stood between two realms. Above him, the throne unshaken. Below him, the adversary restless. Around him, a garden. Still sacred, but also a target. For the one who had fallen had not forgotten. Lucifer now. Satan did not descend into quiet defeat. He watched, he studied, he waited. Not because Adam was mighty, but because Adam was beloved. And to wound the Creator, he would twist the creature. But God did not leave man unguarded. He gave him presence, he gave him purpose, he gave him command. You may eat freely, but of this tree you shall not eat. One line, one law, one warning. Not a burden, but a boundary. Not control, but communion. Because love, even divine, must offer choice. And it was there, in that sacred space, that the enemy moved. Not with violence, with question. not with chains, but with suggestion. And Eden, for the first time, heard a different voice. He did not arrive with thunder. He slithered in silence. Not with flame, but with form. Not as himself, but as a whisper wearing scales. Did God really say? That was the beginning. Not a denial. A doubt. Not a curse, a curiosity. He did not force her hand. He invited her mind. Eve stood not before a weapon, but a sentence. And in that sentence, a seed. He offered not rebellion. He offered clarity. God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened. Truth twisted, wrapped in flattery. You will be like God. But had she not already been formed in his image? Given dominion, welcomed into communion. And yet, something in that sentence felt familiar, as if somewhere in the spirit of creation, those same words had once stirred another heart. Not you will serve, not you will worship, but you will rise. And in that moment, the same fracture that split the heavens reached earth. She took, she ate, she gave. And Adam, not deceived, but silent, followed. The sound that echoed in Eden was not thunder, it was teeth. And heaven felt it. There was no explosion, no earthquake. But the light changed. The trees stood still, the air grew heavy. And their eyes, they opened, not to power, but to shame, not to glory, but to absence. They saw themselves not as gods, but as naked, not as risen, but as ruined. And they hid. The first man, the first woman, formed by hands divine, now crouched among leaves. They were never meant to wear, for the presence had withdrawn, not in rage, but in grief, not to punish, but to protect. For holiness cannot abide where rebellion now breathes. The garden remained, but the covenant was cracked. The voice returned, but it was not soft. Where are you? A question, not of location, but of allegiance. Not of geography, but of soul. And thus, the war that began in heaven found its second front in a garden, a paradise now wounded, and the ones who were to rule it now fractured, not dead but divided, not crushed but cursed. And then God spoke, not to curse first, but to promise. Amidst the fig leaves, the trembling, the blame, there came a sentence not of wrath, but of war. I will put enmity between you and the woman. Between your seed and her seed he shall crush your head, and you shall strike his heel. It was not a threat. It was a prophecy, a whisper, wrapped in judgment, a vow, hidden in pain. For though the serpent had struck first, he would not strike last. Though man had fallen, he would not be forgotten. God did not erase them. He covered them. With garments not of leaves, but of skin, blood was spilled. Not to condemn, but to clothe, a sign that covering always costs. That mercy is never free. And then came the exile, not out of rage, but of mercy, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life. To live forever in separation would be a deeper curse. So the gates were closed, and a sword, flaming turning, guarded the way back. Eden did not vanish, but it was no longer theirs. The earth remained, but it bore the wound. Thorns now grew, sweat now stained, death now waited. And yet, that one sentence echoed louder than the sentence of dust. He shall crush your head, not a man yet born, but one who would come, not an angel restored, but a child of the woman, not with armies, but with obedience, not with brilliance, but with bruises. He would not avoid the serpent, he would meet him, heel to head. And though wounded, he would win. This was not the end. It was the beginning of hope. Not a return to Eden, but a path beyond it. So the war continued. Invisible, unrelenting, above. The faithful angels remained in song. Below, the fallen raged in deception. and between man walked, wounded, covered, promised. The story of the sons of God had taken a new turn. Not only those who watched creation, but now those who must walk in it. Through deserts, through kingdoms, through silence, until one day the promise would cry, not from heaven, but from a manger. Centuries passed. Prophets came, kings fell, empires rose and turned to dust. But the promise never faded. It burned like a coal buried beneath ash, like a seed beneath hardened soil, until, in the quiet of an occupied land, under foreign rule among ordinary people, he came, not wrapped in fire but in flesh, not descending in thunder but born in silence, the seed of the woman, the Word made flesh, the Son not of earth only but of God. And with him the story shifted again, for he did not come to destroy the fallen sons. He came to restore the fallen image. He did not take on the form of an angel. He took on the form of man, because his mission was not to raise the mighty, but to redeem the broken. John wrote, "To all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, not by blood, not by heritage, not by effort, but by grace, by adoption." This was new. Before, the sons of God had been angels, or shadows of them. But now a new family was being formed, not made of light, but of faith, not born above, but reborn within. Paul would write it plainly. All who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. Not servants, sons. Not merely pardoned, adopted. And what does it mean to be adopted by God? It means you are not just forgiven, you are named, not just cleansed, claimed, not just restored, reborn. It means when the enemy accuses, there is now a voice stronger. When the shame returns, there is a robe waiting. When fear rises, there is a spirit that whispers, "You are mine." To be a child of God is not to return to Eden. It is to move forward into something greater. For Eden was a place. Adoption is a position. Eden had boundaries. Adoption has none. And the one who secured this gift, he did not merely open a door. He became the door. He did not only teach the way, he became the way. And through him we don't just echo the angels, we surpass them. For though they were born to serve, we are chosen to reign. Though they sing from proximity, we sing from grace. Though they saw creation, we taste redemption. The angels were never adopted. They were formed complete, holy, purposeful, but they were not heirs. They serve the throne, but do not share it. They sing of the Lamb, but do not dine with him. Their place is glorious, but not intimate. And yet, we creatures of dust, bruised by sin, trembling in weakness, we are invited in, not just to kneel, but to sit, not just to bow, but to belong, Paul said. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and co-heirs with Christ. This is scandalous grace, that those who once hid among leaves now walk among promises, that the ones who once broke trust now hold inheritance, that the fallen can rise again, not as servants but as sons, not just tolerated, celebrated, not just rescued, robed. Even the angels look upon this in awe. Peter wrote, "These are things into which angels long to look." Why? Because they have seen justice, but we have tasted mercy. They obey without stain. We obey through scars. They know the voice of God in thunder. We know it in whispers of grace. And one day they will witness the redeemed take their place, not to rule above them, but to reflect a glory they were never asked to carry. A glory born not of origin, but of love. This is why the cross splits history. Not because it ended something, but because it began something unthinkable. The Son of God made us sons of God. Through his suffering we gained standing. Through his stripes we gained a name. And that name, it cannot be revoked. It cannot be earned. It cannot be lost. It is sealed by the Spirit. It is written in heaven. It is declared in the presence of angels and enemies alike. You are mine, and that changes everything. Not only how we pray, but how we live. Not only how we hope, but how we fight. For we do not wrestle as orphans, but as sons. We do not walk as guests, but as heirs. The throne no longer terrifies, it welcomes. The voice no longer condemns. It calls. And though we still live in the war, we live as victors in waiting. To be adopted is not merely to be received. It is to be reshaped. Not only named, but transformed. Scripture calls us a new creation. Not better clay, but reborn. The old has passed. The new has come. And yet, the world remains the same. Still groaning, still broken, still waging war against the identity we now bear. Because when you are called child of God, you become a target. The enemy who once deceived in Eden still whispers, not with fruit, but with fear. Not with trees, but with lies. You're not really changed. You still stumble. You're not worthy. And to that, the child of God replies, I was never worthy, but I am chosen. I am weak, but he is faithful. I am dust, but I am his. This is not arrogance. This is assurance. Not in ourselves, but in the one who bought us at the highest cost. The blood of the Son secured the name of the sons. And that changes how we walk. We no longer strive to earn approval. We rest in what has been given. We no longer obey to avoid wrath. We obey because we are loved. This love, it disciplines, it molds, it sanctifies, and slowly, painfully, beautifully, we become what we already are, children. And if children, then warriors, because adoption does not remove us from the war. It sends us back into it, but now with armor. So now we ask, if we are truly sons and daughters of the Most High, then how shall we live in a world still ruled by shadows? What does it mean to bear this holy identity in a place that often forgets who made it? How do sons of God walk among ruins? How do heirs of glory stand firm when everything around them shakes? It was never a question of whether war would come. It already had, before Adam, before Eve. Before the first cry of birth, there was the cry of battle. But now it is no longer distant. It is here. It is felt in temptation's tug, in confusion's fog, in the weariness of trying to remain holy in an unholy world. The enemy has not changed, only his weapons. No longer trees, now screens. No longer serpents, now subtle systems. No longer Eden. Now cities filled with noise but empty of wonder. And yet, the bar, the heart. For if he can capture that, he captures all. And so he whispers, not with fangs, but with fatigue. Is this worth it? You're still struggling. Nothing has changed. But it has. Because now we do not fight alone. The Spirit has come, not to observe, but to indwell. Not to applaud from heaven, but to war within. He speaks when the lies come. He strengthens when the knees shake. He convicts, yes, but also comforts. And he reminds us of who we are, sons, daughters, heirs, not just of heaven, but of hope. And so we put on what Paul called the armor of God. Not metal, but mindset. Not iron, but identity. Truth to silence the lies. Righteousness to protect the heart. Faith to block the arrows. Salvation to guard the mind. The word not as memory, but as sword. And we stand, not because we are unshakable, but because he is. The war is not over, but the victory has already been written. And every time we choose light, we echo heaven. Every time we forgive, we reflect the cross. Every time we resist temptation, we remind the enemy. His time is short, for soon the skies will open, not in symbolism, but in splendor, not with prophecy, but with presence. And the one who came in weakness will return in glory. The Son of God, once wrapped in cloth, will be crowned in fire. And all creation angels, elders, nations will bow, some in fear, others in joy. And the adopted, they will rise. The scroll will bull, not by prophet, not by angel, but by he, the lion who bled, he, the sun who rose. And when he breaks the seals, it will not be chaos, it will be closure. What began with a lie will end with a 3. What began in a garden will end in a city that no serpent may ent. The heavens will shake, but not in fear. The earth will groan, then be remade. And those who stood when it was hard, those who walked through fire, who prayed in silence, who held to the name, when the world offered every other, not overlooked, not forgotten, they will be robed, they will be named, and a voice, the same that will say, well done, not because they were perfect, but because they were faithful, not because they never fell, but because they never stayed fallen. And the enemy, the accuser of the brethren, he will be silenced, the one who deceived in Eden, who slithered through nations, who spoke in shadows. He will be bound, not argued with, not debated, judged, cast down one last time, not to wander, but to be sealed. And with him all that twisted light into darkness. No more fear, no more death, no more war. The battle will be over. The swords will be melted, the tears will be wiped, and the throne, once seen by Isaiah, once glimpsed by John, will be surrounded again by sons, by daughters, by those not born of angelic flame but of redemptive fire. The heavens will not echo with why but with holy, not with weeping but with singing. The song interrupted long ago will resume, and it will be louder. For now it will include voices from every tribe, every tongue, every story. The adopted will take their place, not below the angels, but beside them. And the Father who began it all will dwell with his children. No veil, no barrier, only glory, only peace, only love. That will never again be challenged by pride. So now you know. You are not just breath and bone, not just shadow and memory. You are a son, a daughter, not by nature, but by choice, not your choice. His. He chose you before the world spun, before sin scarred. He wrote your name not in dust but in blood, and sealed it with spirit. So when the voices rise, when doubt claws, when the night feels heavier than your hope, remember this: you were adopted into war, but destined for glory. You fight not to prove, but to proclaim. You resist not to earn, but to reflect. And though the battle still stings, you are not losing. You are enduring, and one day you will stand, not as a survivor, but as an heir. Not trembling, but triumphant. Not because you never doubted, but because you never let go. So rise, even when weary. Pray, even when dry. Sing, even when the silence mocks you. You are not alone. You are not unloved. You are not unwanted. You belong. You are his, and he is coming. And when he comes, the war will end. The veil will lift. The joy will roar. And the sons of God, from every age, from every sorrow, will gather, and they will shine, brighter than stars, louder than thunder, forever. So here we are, at the end. But perhaps this is not an end at all, only a beginning. For now you know what was hidden, Now you remember what creation forgot. That before there was breath, there was glory. Before there was man, there were witnesses. Before there was a fall, there was a song. And still the song continues. The heavens have not gone silent. The throne has not been moved. The promise has not failed. You are part of that story now. Not just a listener, a bearer. Not just a voice in the crowd. A name in the book. Your name. And that name means something. It declares something. It says, you belong. To the God who speaks galaxies. To the Lamb who breaks seals. To the Spirit who hovers even now over your heart. You are not dust only. You are destiny, not accident. Inheritance. Not a sinner trying to earn heaven, but a child walking home. So may you walk with wonder again. May the stars above remind you of the day the sons of God sang. And may the Spirit within remind you that you are now one of them. May you live as light. May you stand through shadow. And when the enemy comes, with old lies in modern form, may you remember Eden. May you remember the promise. May you remember the Lamb. And may you say, not with fear, but with fire, I am a son of God. I am a daughter of the King. I will not go back. I was born for glory. Thank you truly for joining us on this sacred journey. If these words strengthened you, carry them. If this story stirred you, share it. And if you hunger for more, come back. There are more mysteries, more glory, more truth waiting to be uncovered together. This is Verse and Wisdom, where ancient words meet your present battle. Subscribe if you haven't already, because the story continues. Until the trumpet sounds, until the skies break open, until we meet again, face to face with the one who called us his own. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. May you walk in the full joy of being called his child. Go in peace. Go in power. Go as a son of God.